But I'm just very pleased to be here with you all. It's a real honor to have an opportunity to have a discussion around how you all can help us change the world. And I'm saying that because it's very well known and very true that businesses have an ability to reach consumers and their communities in which they operate, also their employees, to engage them in causes. And so what we're going to talk about today and have a discussion around is how we can engage those consumers and employees around the issue at hand, being improving nutrition globally. So there's no doubt that this cause marketing or cause branding space has proven very mutually beneficial to both the business community and to the cause community in which it supports over the last 20-odd, even more than that, years. There's numerous studies that come out every single year that point to the fact that brands and causes, when teaming up, can make significant impact. And they're even comparing the issues and the awareness levels in developed countries as well as those emerging economies like China, Brazil, Indonesia, many of the places in which you all are working. And what's found is that across the board, consumers are interested in working with or purchasing from companies that are explicitly making the world a better place. That's something that we're finding in all of the studies that are published. According to Cone, which is one of the thought leaders in this space, a recent study they just put out is that 93% of all consumers want to purchase with a conscience. And we know that when quality and price are the same, that purchases are choosing their brand loyalty based on purpose. So this is what we're going to talk about today, but it should be noted perhaps that the cause marketing that many of us perhaps think about of the last 5-10 years is very different than what's happening today. It's not enough for companies to do ad hoc giving or single, short-term campaigns or even donate employee volunteer hours. What we're seeing today is that companies are making long-term commitments to causes that are central to their core business. And that's a really exciting movement because we're seeing that the commitments that are both authentic and transparent are the ones that are having the most impact. That's the ones that the consumers are trusting the most. And we know that consumer trust is of paramount importance. And we also know that consumers want to be engaged. They want to join with companies who they see are making a difference in the world, and they want to participate with them, whether it's through their purchasing power or through being brand advocates for the brands that they've grown to love. So I think it's very fitting that we're having this conversation with our Business Alliance members today. I think we've heard a little bit already this morning about how nutrition, quite frankly, needs the awareness, it needs the advocates, and it needs the resources that you all can bring to bear when you mobilize your consumers and your employers. And there's a lot to be gained as a business leader, building that brand leadership, building that thought leadership in this space. And it's worth mentioning perhaps that about a year ago, Gain saw an opportunity to harness the potential in this space and to build a platform for consumers to engage on this very critical issue. And just earlier this year, we launched that initiative called Future Fortified, which was an effort to engage individuals and organizations and businesses, particularly starting off in the US market, around this issue and giving them an opportunity to engage. And in just a short amount of time, we've been able to mobilize about 35,000 people in the US and are working with a number of our Business Alliance members, including one that's joining us today on stage. So with that, I'd like to dive into the discussion and introduce our panelists who are going to be speaking on this from two different angles, one related to nutrition, one not necessarily, but we can learn lessons from both of them, and we hope to have a very interactive question and answer session with all of you in the room. So let me first introduce Jeff Terry, who is the head of Amway's CSR, Corporate Social Responsibility efforts, which he is managing for all of Amway. And as mentioned, Amway is one of our newer Business Alliance newest Business Alliance members, and they are also supporting our Future Fortified initiative. I'd also like to introduce David Meller, who is the Director of Product Integrity at the Fairtrade Foundation. The Fairtrade Foundation, as many of you may know here in the UK, is responsible for that very well-known mark that is on so many products, which we are all hopefully buying because they are Fairtrade. And he has, or is responsible for all aspects of the on-product use of that Fairtrade mark. Their bios are listed in your booklets, so I won't go into a great amount of other detail on their backgrounds. Please do read them. But it's worth noting that combined, David and Jeff bring 40 years of experience in this CSR and corporate sustainability space, which is precisely why we've asked them to join us here today and to share with us their experiences and their perspectives, and to provide some lessons learned and the challenges and opportunities as we look ahead in this space. So I'm going to hand it over to Jeff to kick us off.
Great. Thanks, Adrianna. Good afternoon. I really appreciate the fact that you've aged us, frankly. But I also want to say this is the first section after lunch, so please bear with us. If for any reason you're feeling a little sleepy, look right here, because you'll be blinded with the lights. I'm just kidding. But there's so many different ways to start this conversation. So I just want to take a few minutes and really build off something that Adrianna mentioned. There is an increasing interest in global consumers around the world in purpose, their purpose, personally, the purpose of the organizations with whom they support, the companies and the products that they consume. And it is a bit of how we talk about in Amway a purpose reset. And it's not just in Amway, it's in a lot of different places. So I want to use that as a great springboard into talking a little bit about kind of this whole concept of building brand value and see if this works. I've had a number of conversations with folks already this morning saying, who's Amway? Why are you here? What does this have to do with? And you might have just been saying that in the back because I saw some laughing. Amway is a very interesting company. We are a company that's focused around direct selling. That is what we call, what I like to refer to as direct sales or direct marketing. It's really about relationships. We've been around for 54 years. We're the second largest direct selling company in the world. We have annual sales approaching 11 billion. I think we'll eclipse that this year. But the other interesting thing about us, beyond the relationships that we work to develop and the entrepreneurs that we focus on growing the business around, we support well over 3 million individual business owners around the world today that sell our product, because we make about 450 different kinds of products, really around a couple of key areas, nutrition being the largest part of our business. We're the worldwide leading, largest manufacturer and distributor of nutritional supplements in the world. We also have a big cosmetics business, a big soaps and detergents business, so on and so forth. We have a lot of, and here they are. So Nutrilite is, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this, and I'm intentionally talking about brands to start this off. So Amway is a brand, but we think of this as an enterprise. And the purpose behind Amway is we believe in the human potential of every individual. We have a vision of helping people live better lives, but we recognize that our purpose is giving people the tools that enable them to live into their greatest potential. So that's our purpose. That's where kind of the purpose starts with Amway. And we help enable them with incredible tools, like Nutrilite, a brand that's been around for about 80 years. That was basically kind of built by Carl Renberg in China. That was based on harnessing the power of phytonutrients that comes in botanicals. If you can't eat a plate of fruits and vegetables every single day, we're going to build for you a nutritional supplement that's based on the phytonutrients within those botanicals that can give you those same nutritional benefits. So from that said, Nutrilite for us starts at the farm. It starts with organic farming. It starts with sustainable agriculture. We manufacture and distribute over 10 billion nutritional supplement pills every year. We've got tremendous amount of science around this, 28 different research and science labs around the world with many clinical studies. So just a little background. So how does brand and nutrition make sense? Where does Amway fit into this conversation? Well, from a nutrition perspective, what we recognized about 7 years ago was that we have this great clinical expertise, scientific expertise in nutrition sciences. And the problem with Nutrilite is that it is perceived that way. Again, our market is about 3 billion distributors and independent business owners around the world. They look at this brand as helping to put great science and nutritional help into their lives. And they think about it very clinically. What we recognized as a business, however, was that we have all of this, what I'd say in a core competency. How can we leverage that best to provide social good as well? And about 6 years ago, around one of our farms in Brazil, one of our organic farms, we recognized significantly high levels of chronic malnutrition in the children there. We started working with schools, taking the products that we were growing on trees and mashing them up and incorporating them into the diets of in the cafeterias where these children were eating. At the same time is when the World Health Organization and UNICEF came out with their guidance on micronutrient powders. And it started the conversation in the company of saying, we can do more. There's more opportunity here. So we created a micronutrient product. We continue to develop this today to begin using upwards in 18 countries in the future, starting in 2014. We're currently active in 2 countries, Zambia and Mexico. But from a brand perspective, it had to go beyond. I should say it this way, there was an opportunity to go beyond just doing it because we had an opportunity to. This is the great discussion that we started this morning. There's still a misunderstanding around where corporate social responsibility and business practice comes together or doesn't come together. For a long time, to Adrianna's point, 10 years ago, CSR was, hey, let's be philanthropic, let's be good, let's give back, so on and so forth. The whole trend in CSR, and I think of my discipline in this way, we're about business specialists. It's about understanding the business and helping to guide investments within our business to see what opportunities are coming down the road, be them 10 years, 5 years, 2, 3 years, and being an internal salesman to help get there. Nutrilite Little Bits is a great example of that, where Little Bits make sense for us from a nutrition brand, from a Nutrilite brand perspective, is it also helps to give new dimension to the brand. It takes us away from just being a clinical and scientific focused brand. It allows us to engage with our independent business owners, all 3 million of them, in a different way around this brand. It's already over 50% of our business. Now it allows them to think differently about this brand. It's doing incredible good for themselves and their families. We're also, with their help, alongside us, helping to do good for many others in the world as well. So that's one example. But I want to bring this back in because I think I've already eclipsed my 5-minute time, sorry. I want to talk about the different elements of this. The piece of this, too, from a brand, and it goes beyond brand building here. It is around thought leadership. We recognize we can't do all of this ourselves. We have great nutrition science. We have a great mobilized force of individuals that we support and that support us. But we need others who have other core competencies to help us grow the business, help us do good, whether it's for the business and certainly for society. And that's where GAIN came in. We joined GAIN earlier this past year for a number of really critical reasons. We don't know all. We need to keep learning. GAIN is an incredibly valuable resource for us to learn about what it takes to be involved in the nutrition space. We're a very insular company, Amway is. That's why a lot of people don't know about us. We have this population of 3+ million people that are a part of our business. But we also feel an obligation to help elevate the importance of nutrition around the world. Part of that is to learn and to ensure that we're doing all the right things and that we can take and engage and mobilize the 3 million loyal people to us to help elevate this issue as well. So we partner here certainly in a significant focus area that Gain's focused in, helping us figure out how to do it better. But a part of it too is also, as I mentioned, elevating this conversation. We feel like we can not only supply product, services, and frankly a business model that allows us to reach down to the base to provide support, services, training, financial benefit to people, but we want to help elevate this conversation. There is an awesome asset I think that Gain has, and it's future Fortified. It's a way of introducing this conversation in a different way to an entirely new target. We're looking at this as how we can elevate the issue of chronic malnutrition and the importance of nutrition to our distributorship and then beyond. So we've partnered with Gain and through Future Fortified and the salon around the Clinton Global Initiative this year that talked about food for thought. And we're actually smack dab in the middle of kind of bookend events that are focused on bringing some really strategic influencers together to have the conversation about nutrition, as well as leveraging the interest and power of sport to get the message out a little more broadly as well. We're doing this, I don't even know what we call it. It's a Amway Future Fortified partnership with a couple of National Basketball Association leagues or teams, and the Golden State Warriors and the Orlando Magic. There's a reason for that. One of the members of the family, one of the family members that owns Amway, in fact, owns the Orlando Magic. So we got a little in there. Plus, we kind of own the arena where they play. So this boils back into the how do you leverage assets that you currently have and use them in a different way. I'm not a PR guy, but there's a great PR statement I think that's really powerful, and it's be in unexpected but relevant places. And this is a great example of being in unexpected and relevant places. Would you go to a football match in Chelsea, because they're my favorite team here, and expect to hear information on nutrition? Maybe not necessarily, but in order for those athletes, for John Terry, who's my cousin, not really, just share the last name, for him to have gotten to the point to perform at his highest level, nutrition was a part of that story. So this is our angle on this conversation, and I'll buzz through this. So it's about engagement, but it starts with awareness and education. We want to get the word out. This is a really cool growth chart that's got the Stuff, who's the mascot of the Magic, on there. We're going to engage kids. We're going to have a whole experience at this game on Friday night in Orlando for kids to come and learn about the importance of nutrition. And we're going to give them a growth chart, because it is about growing. It's about developing and understanding, packaging along with that the challenges of stunting and why is it important to get the right nutrition. It is about physiological, and mental growth and so on and so forth. But it's also about kind of taking this out. We want to expose everybody who's at this game and around this game to this issue of why good nutrition is important. I'm so very sorry for that picture. It's the only daggone one I could get in the short notice to pull this together. But it's about engagement. We want to ask people to get involved. That's a great thing about Future Fortified. It's about, hey, sign your pledge. Sign a pledge to get involved, or let's put some money towards this. So a fun thing that we're doing is we're trying to raise $1,000 for every free throw shot made during this game coming up Friday night. We did it in San Francisco last week, but we want people to get engaged in different ways. Get engaged here, get engaged here, get engaged here. It's a way that we can support the 1,000 Days initiative. And I think, lastly, if you want to cue up the video.
Take to be an elite athlete. Relentless drive. Natural talent. A supportive community. It takes all of that. But the road to dunks, goals, and finish lines begins long before they can tie their own shoes. In fact, a child's height and well-being is determined in the first 1,000 days from a woman's pregnancy to a child's second birthday. That's why we've partnered with Future Fortified to help children around the world get the right start with good nutrition. And it's why we are investing in school feeding programs across China, helping children grow tall. This season, join Amway and Future Fortified in giving the gift that keeps kids growing.
Thank you for queuing that up. And I think the last thing that I'll say on this, because you saw the mention of supporting school feeding programs in China. We do believe, we understand and recognize the importance of the first 1,000 days. But we also have great social investment strategies in many different places around the world, China specifically, where we've built 700 nutrition kitchens over the course of the last year and a half. We'll have 1,000 built by the end of next year, and we have a goal to start building 1,000 a year starting in 2014. And this is done in partnership with the government. It's done in partnership with other organizations on the ground there. It is continuing the whole discussion around nutrition into adulthood, we feel is critical and is an important part of what our strategy is into the future as well. Recognizing that, through the power of GAIN and through the power of Future Fortified, that gives us an opportunity to engage in this conversation in a way that makes sense for us as a company, being a novice in being a part of the conversation. I think it's fair to say that. And then it gives us, through this partnership, kind of the tools to help increase the opportunities, not just from a thought leadership, but from a doing perspective and from a brand alignment perspective for us leading forward as well. So with that, sorry to take so much time. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Jeff. As we pull up the next presentation that David has, I just have one quick question for you, Jeff. If you could describe, because you mentioned going beyond, beyond CSR.
Yeah.
Can you talk about where CSR fits into, and this work really fits into Amway's business model and its business practice?
It fits in a couple of different places. It's a great question. CSR for us as a company has largely been defined, I would say it this way, citizenship as a company has largely been defined for us for too long as sheerly philanthropy. And I'm not going to minimize philanthropy because there's always a place for it. But this is really about strategic advice, and our role in our CSR department as much as is a strategic advisor on where our business opportunities can come in the future. Whether it's in South Africa, working with GAIN to understand how can we leverage our business model, which is about building entrepreneurism at the very base of the pyramid, and putting in the market basket the right products that are not only going to help to raise self-sufficiency levels in individuals there, but also is going to help to improve the health of the individuals and the families that we're working and helping to build entrepreneurs from. So I think our role in CSR is helping to think about how our business model needs to change, evolve, and improve, as well as from a product and a brand level, what are those product and brand what are those product opportunities that align with our product brands that can do the same thing, help to improve health.
Great. Thank you very much. And now David is going to share some insights from the Fairtrade Foundation, and hopefully we'll get some lessons learned for the nutrition and food security space.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to be here. I've got to say, when I was invited, I wasn't entirely sure of the obvious link, but I can assure you there is one. And it's great to be talking about what I've called, learning from success. Got a son at home. I've been lecturing about learning or not learning from his mistakes. So to spend a Monday afternoon talking about learning from success is a welcome break. Right, is this working?
It's touching.
Right? There we go. Just some numbers about Fairtrade, give you an idea of sort of size, scale. What I'm not going to talk too much about today is the sort of how it all works. And I'm going to also take the liberty of assuming that you already know what Fairtrade is. The stat in the bottom right there is that 9 out of 10 people actually know about Fairtrade. So if you're the 1 in 10 that doesn't, come and see me afterwards and I can fill you in. But I'm assuming you're much more well-informed than the average public, of course. So, yeah, we reach over 1.2 million farmers in the developing world. We've got 991 producer organisations. I won't tell you all these figures, you can see them for yourselves. 4.9 million euros worth of sales, and 12% growth last year, and I'll show you some UK figures in a minute. And it's, in essence, the most widely recognised mark. And so what I want to talk to you today about is really, you know, what are some of the things in the formula that have made it at that, and hopefully you can take a couple of things away. This is the UK picture. Now, you can argue or debate, you know, is Fairtrade a brand in itself? But you need to recognise, of course, we sit alongside other brands. So we're a mark, we're a licensed mark that goes on the likes of Kit Kat in this country, or goes on the likes of Sainsbury's Bananas. But if we were a brand, we would actually be the biggest. We would be above Coke. Just obviously now waiting with interest to see the 2012 figures, but these were the 2011 figures. 12% growth through the recession, which of course most businesses would die for, and 1.35 billion pounds worth of sales. So sizable, and we will have kicked on again this year, absolutely no doubt. And you know, why? And I just tried to sort of distill this down, and I think it's for 3 reasons really that Fairtrade has been a huge success. It's primarily because it works, but it doesn't just work for one small segment of society, if you want to call it that. It works for 3. It works for producers, it works for consumers, and it works for business. Oops, bit quick there. And it does it at scale, but I think one of the strongest characteristics of Fairtrade is its people-centric orientation. And we know the customers and the consumers very well in this country, and I'm going to show you some data on that. But we also know by name the producers that we actually reach out to. And here's a sound little quote from Sira Suku in Mali. I dug this one out actually because I thought it may resonate somewhat with yourselves. And what does she say about Fairtrade? She says that it's put money into the hands of women to meet our children's needs. We can buy pens and notebooks so they can go to school. We put seeds and fertiliser to grow vegetables and improve our family's diet. And there's millions and millions of quotes like this. But this is, in essence, what the difference Fairtrade is making on the ground. And then for consumers, we've got a very vibrant consumer scene in the UK. It is replicated elsewhere in the world. We're one of 23 labelling initiatives, as they're called. So we're not alone, but the UK is the biggest market for Fairtrade. And as well as the on-pack product licensing that we've become very famous for, there's also some other strands. So we will recognise a town as being a Fairtrade town as long as they've made a pledge, delivered on some commitments and so on. And we've got 500 of those. We've got 700 schools and 5,000 registered to try to become a Fairtrade school, which means Fairtrade is on your curriculum, you're serving Fairtrade tea and coffee in the staff room, you're making Fairtrade products available to children, and so on. We've reached out to 150 universities, 7,000 churches. The church, of course, was, you know, right from the very outset, a big supporter of Fairtrade. We are a non-religious organisation, but churches have always been very important to us. And we've widened that to include now 41 synagogues, 3 mosques, and in fact, last year, our first Hindu temple. So quite a significant network from a consumer point of view. I was at an IGD conference, that's the Institute of Grocery Distribution, a few years ago. This was 2009. And the great and the good of the food industry were there in a room a bit like this, only bigger. And they had these voting pads where they were asked to vote on a number of things throughout the day. And I captured this, and I think it's absolutely fascinating. Because the delegates at the conference were asked to rate those various things as to what did they think the people that they served were most interested in. And they said that number 1 would be the global economy, and so on and so forth. The IGD had previously actually done some genuine consumer research and then flashed up the actual answers, which I'm now attempting to do. perhaps the batteries are going in this. Oh, there we go. And this is what the shopper said. And so these are people that would claim to know their consumers really well. The interesting one, of course, is the one fourth from bottom, poverty and hunger. The delegates had relegated that to fifth. And yet the research data showed that that was the issue that mattered most to consumers. Now, that was 2009, and okay, things might have changed a little bit, but I think it's fascinating insight. And so one of my points is really understanding customers is paramount. And the Fairtrade customer isn't going to be the same as your customer, so you could scribble these facts and figures down, but they wouldn't mean anything to you. You've got to get under the skin of your own customers. I'm just putting this up just to sort of show you the way we've approached it. And each of those bubbles is a cluster of a type of Fairtrade customer. And the small orange one actually is the resolute cynic, because we do recognise there are people out there that either don't get it, won't get it, or get it, but have sort of walked away from it. So you're not going to appeal to everybody. But on the right there, we've got about 40% of people, favourably inclined to buy Fairtrade. We've got the connected champions, as we call them, which are our most prized segment. They're not only buying into Fairtrade, they're using their own networks to spread the word and rustle up more interest. And then the big blue bubble is solo supporters. So they're people that reach out less, but are very conscientious in themselves about what they do. And underneath all of this, there's a lot of detail then about demographics and age profiles, what sort of newspapers they read. And why is that important? Well, it helps us focus our efforts then in terms of marketing and promotion. And we can work with brands and with their segmentation to understand how best to work with them. By way of an insight, we launched with Kit Kat on the four-finger Kit Kat, as it's called. And now you probably know Kit Kats come in 1,001,001 different varieties. You've got chunky ones, peanut butter ones, orange ones, mint ones, two-finger ones, and the four-finger one was a great starting point. And we're converting the two-finger one this year, actually. But there was some insight when we went through with Nestle, our segmentation and theirs, which said, well, actually, that might not, in hindsight, have been the best product to launch on. Now, we've done it, and it's been a success, so it's not a problem. But it's really quite interesting to look at it, because if, as we know, we've got a slightly more predominantly female customer base, and we know the right age profile, it might have been something like Kit Kat Senses, which is the lower calorie female targeted Kit Kat, that might have been the cuter or slightly more astute product to launch Fairtrade on. Now, it's all done its history, it's all under the bridge, but I think this is just an illustration of the sort of way you can use customer insight to drive your decisions. And the other point, which I must make, is that this isn't static. So it's evolving. The graph is of consumer recognition in Fairtrade, but it's sort of, not wobbled, but undulated a little bit. And we've had to reinvent. So there's been, as you can see, 2 major iterations of the mark. Drop the wording, which is a sign we'd arrived in the sense of not needing to use the wording, I guess. What we're now wrestling with is, where next? Does the mark move on again? Do we have a sort of gold mark? Do we allow the mark to be used in different ways? And what's the next phase of our evolution? But it's not a static environment, is my point. And trust is absolutely critical. So this is we measure this annually, and this is a graph of our trust levels against our competitors, because it's equally important that you really understand what you're up against. And the labelling space is incredibly crowded. It's not easy to get labels out there and get the cut through that we've got. So building and maintaining trust, absolutely fundamental. But also, if you can pull it off, I've described it being cool and trendy. And this was a survey. It took us by surprise, actually, because we hadn't picked up that it was going on. And it was actually in Australia. But it was the 10 most desirable brands. And on there, you've got the iPad, the iPhone, all the things that kids would think of, are probably on their Christmas list. And we snuck in at number 9, which is incredible. So, above Marmite, which is, great iconic product in the UK. But I mean, that's just fantastic, and it's payback for some of that grassroots stuff that I sort of flashed up on the pictures earlier on. So to be fun, to be attractive, desirable, all part of the mix. But you've also got to be businesslike. So we have to, we can't engage with the companies we've engaged with and let them down. So what does business engagement look like? It looks like it's about growing supply and about growing demand. So, can we get more producers in? Well, yes, we can. They're queuing up. Can we get more consumers in? Yes, we can. We've got the track record and there's more to come. So, for as a business proposition, you're right in the centre in that sort of sweet spot in many ways. But you absolutely have got to be able to deliver at scale. There has been times over Fairtrade's history where we've arguably sort of overextended ourselves a little bit too soon, but we've thankfully ridden it. But yeah, delivery at scale is hugely important. And something we're increasingly recognising, this idea of being a solution provider. I'm sure in the Q&A we'll come on to some of the other sort of interrelated issues around social responsibility and this sort of thing, but it's complex. And if a business can come to a third party like us and we can provide them with a solution, that's going some way to setting things off on the right foot. CSR, CR, the S got dropped, didn't it, several years ago for obvious reasons. Sustainability, we're finding increasingly that's the reason why companies want to work with us, is they're trying to think 20 years from now. Is their supply chain of cocoa in West Africa going to be secure 20 years from now? And what would they need to put in place now to ensure that? And it's organisations like us that can help businesses with that. And the final one is supply chain collaboration in practice. I'm convinced that collaboration is the latest buzzword. I can't go anywhere these days without hearing about it. But it's an easy one to say, and it's not a very easy one to do. I think part of our success is based on being able to bring that to life for companies. So, my final slide. If you ask me for the magic recipe for success, I just try to sort of dump my thoughts and sort of, I thought I'll leave you with this one and then we'll go to Q&A. But the first thing, absolutely, I think, is to be clear on your purpose. Don't vary from it, don't waver, don't have a cloudy one or a murky one, or, be absolutely clear, because if you're not clear, you're not going to be clear to the outside world. Be relevant. So you could have a very clear purpose that is irrelevant. That's not going to get you very far. Trust, I've already spoken about. It's critically important to be trusted, to have some transparency, to be authentic, but absolutely crucial. Be desirable, is the point I made. If you can get people to want to buy into you for whatever reason, that's going to work. Be brave, because in those early days of Fairtrade, there were lots of people that were saying it was never going to work. And there were lots of people sort of rocking back in their swivel chairs, waiting for it to fall flat and say, told you so, and that didn't happen. But it only happened because the people that were doing it at the time, and I take no credit for it because I wasn't there, had the courage to stick with it. They knew it was right, they could see the signals were pointing in the right direction, and they stuck with it. And as I say, there may have been the odd wobble on the way, but you've seen the stats and you've seen the data. And then my final one is be bottom up. And what I mean by that is, we often look at pyramids and sort of ways of influencing. And I would say just turn it upside down. Look at it the other way around. By putting producers at the heart of what we do, and by putting consumers at the heart of what we do in the market in the UK, that's what's got us where we are today. So I'll leave you at that, and I think we now go into Q&A.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, David. Just to go off that point on the last slide, in terms of elements of success, it'd be great to hear from both of you. What are some examples of those sort of key elements, whether it's internal or external to your company or organization, that have made you able to move forward in the work that you're doing? Do you want to start, Jeff?
Sure. Wow. Good question. Doozy. Just kidding. I think it comes down to when we were back in the days of just being able to do something because it felt good. That measure of success was, hey, we impacted so many lives. Today it's about building the business case. We focus on and then delivering on that business case. And I think largely with what we're doing as it relates to nutrition today is saying, why are we going to engage with Future Fortified? Why do we want to have a campaign that's going to go out and try to reach so many people at a basketball game. And increasingly, it's less about the breadth of the 15,000 people that we're going to reach with messaging in this game. And it goes closer down into, we've got 40 individuals, influencers, that we're going to build relationships with, that we're going to be able to go back and have a much deeper conversation to engage around nutrition. So that's a great example. With San Francisco, we were just there a week ago today together, doing the same thing. We had about 20 organizations with us. That gives us now the opportunity to go back and say, we want to work together. How do we build that? So that's a good example. I mentioned South Africa before, and kind of reaching into this, what we call our township model, where we're really focusing on building entrepreneurs. There's a direct application and implication to our business in doing this, and now kind of looking at a market basket to say what makes the most sense for us as a company, and at the same time from a social outputs or outcomes perspective, and incorporating some nutritional elements to that market basket. That's to be determined, but we've recognized through the business model, through modifications to our business model, whether it was around product bundling or packaging sizing or so on and so forth, we're seeing a return on that. So there is a return element to the business associated with this. Some of those returns may be short-term. Increasingly, they're long-term, so it makes for the business case development that much more important.
Great. And David, are there key elements that you had to bring on internally at the Fairtrade Foundation to move your objectives forward, or were there key factors from external actors that you needed?
Yeah, I think that was probably one of the bigger learning points in the early days of Fairtrade, was that we frankly did ask customers to compromise. So those early days of Fairtrade in the sort of mid-90s were characterised by slightly inferior products at slightly inflated prices. So we were asking people to buy, less than nice coffee and pay more for it for the sake of that mark. And it's incredible that we managed to get away with that, but we did. Perhaps relates to the sort of be brave and persistent point. But where we are now, and I think the learning that you could take is you cannot compromise on quality. Whatever mark that product's going on, the quality's got to be absolutely spot on. And what we've now managed to get to is a place, because of the economies of scale that we've got, we are now able to bring quite often, not always, but quite often, Fairtrade products to market at no price differential either. So with quality as good as and maintained, price the same, the addition of the Fairtrade logo starts to get into that territory of being a no-brainer. I hate the phrase, but it starts to be in a place where, well, why wouldn't you buy it? Why would you choose a non-Fairtrade banana these days if the price is the same as the quality is the same? So you start to get into that sort of virtuous circle of it's just the obvious and logical thing to do.
Great. Well, let me turn to the audience and see if there are any questions for our panelists at this time. I'm sure there's a roaming mic somewhere. Does anyone have anything? Yeah.
And I remember from my time with you all that there were some barriers that had to be overcome there. And I'm just wondering if you've had successes there, and if there's any lessons you learned that you can share with this audience as this audience seeks to try and battle against some of the regulatory frameworks they're dealing with trying to get products onto the shelves, nutritional products for consumers in the South.
Yeah. I can't tell you much about it, frankly, because it's not my area of specialism, but what I can tell you is we have succeeded in launching a product in the South. The first one was, in fact, Cadbury's Dairy Milk, so made in South Africa using South African ingredients and sold in South Africa. So that model, if you like, has been proven that we can deliver it. It's quite exciting because, of course, the potential could be massive in countries like Africa, and India would be another great one, in fact. As to the challenges and the issues, I would imagine, as I say, not that I favour it, but I would imagine it's going to be challenges around price, accessibility, recognition, understanding. So all of the things that we use to build on our success in the UK just wouldn't be there in those sorts of markets. But as I say, no, the first step's been taken, and I guess we just need to watch it and see where we can take it next.
Great.
But I was wondering if the link somewhere is not right down there at the field. We know that farmers are most of the time some of the most malnourished people. So would you have, or could you think about having a nutrition line into your certification process? Because working with Rainforest Alliance, it was quite interesting to look at health as an indicator going through the certification process. And you're reaching out to so many farmers, and if I understand correctly now, even gold mines and other products. Most of these people are malnourished. So it would be a way to push the malnutrition agenda directly with these people.
Yeah. I guess part of me says, to the point about being clear on purpose, it may take us into sort of territory that is less core to us. But to go back to the example I gave of Sarah in Mali, and the fact that she's identifying the need for better nutrition for her family, and he's been able to deliver that through Fairtrade. In essence, what Fairtrade is trying to do is to empower people in the south. It's about getting extra money to them in the form of a minimum price and a premium, but also getting them organised. So when premium does go to the south through Fairtrade markets, it goes to a joint body and is democratically sort of administered, if you like, in the community. And if nutrition is on the agenda of the people there, then that's where the money would get spent. If actually it's access to water or developing education or infrastructure, then that's where they spend it. So I suppose it comes back to the bottom-up point, is that Fairtrade isn't about us doing development to the people in the south. It's about us getting funds to them, getting them organised, empowering them, and then enabling them to make their decisions. And I don't want to flog that example, but there are lots of examples where nutrition does come up, but it's rooted at source rather than us sort of imposing it or bringing it. I think that's the key thing in the Fairtrade model.
I know I saw another hand go up. Did it go back down? Okay. Great. I didn't bring a watch with me, so how much more time do I have, James?
We are 10 minutes, yeah.
We're getting there. Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I wanted to, Jeff, did you want to say something? Or because I have a question for you, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. Knock yourself out.
We'll need to start
I wanted
wrapping
to
up.
ask just a quick question, and then we'll come wrap. Yep. About the fact that you're in the midst of this process, as we've discussed at Amway, but you've also worked previously at companies and brought them from no brand leadership to a brand leadership position connected to a cause. And so it'd be great to hear from for people who are in the room who might also be in similar positions, or their colleagues might be in similar positions. What advice or sort of lessons learned you can take from previously and what you're going through now to help us succeed.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I could probably take an hour or so to answer it, but I'll try to cover it in just a few key points. And it starts with your vision. You have to be true to who you are. I think your point was dead on, and don't creep away from that. So you have to start with the core essential to your vision and your purpose, and then identify all the assets that you have available to you. And what I mean by that is it's as important for a business to build internally the culture for focusing on a global issue or around a cause, and building it within requires you using as many and all assets as you possibly have. And I'll give you a great example. That could be a product brand. That can be your human resources group that is all about how do you engage all the key stakeholders necessary to your business in this. Your employee base is a piece of that. Your customer base is a key piece of that. Again, it's about understanding what core competencies that you have as a company to put towards addressing a cause. I hate to describe it that way, or an issue and so on and so forth. And where you don't have those, you go get them. And a great example of that is kind of working with us at Amway is working with a great trade partner, for a lack of a better way of describing it, in DSM. what can we leverage from them and they can leverage from us to help address an issue, just as an example. And then it's spending. I always like to say this. It's about spending other people's money within the context of an organization and a company. Because from a CSR perspective, again, I look at our role as being more catalytic, in that helping the company and our brands realize the potential that we can do bigger than what we ever thought we could do. And the great thing about that is I get to use a lot of people's money in doing that, because one siloed budget can only take you so far, but kind of adopting and increasing individual roles and ownership around an issue and an opportunity within a company is really how you can really make things happen. I'm a big believer in, or I've always believed in, leadership is about getting people to follow you when they don't have to, and a part of that is really helping to in part develop a vision of what's possible, and then bringing other people in to own that vision and really create that new collective vision, and that's how you do it inside of a company. There's nuances to that no matter where you are, but I've been fortunate to be a part of many companies, whether directly on the inside or consulting for them, to help them do that. And the formula is not difficult itself. Actually doing the work is tremendously difficult because there's so many different agendas, as with any organization. And that's where the private sector is no different than civil society and no different than the public sector. Everybody's has their, I hate to say it this way, agendas and what they're trying to work towards. And kind of when you can build that collective energy in one directional way, it doesn't necessarily have to be the pinpoint thing, but when you're going down kind of that core to who you are as a company, and that's, again, back to your vision and your purpose. You got to leverage others and build it along the way, and be humble, because if you're not, you're never going to be accomplished in what you're trying to do for your company or organization. I hope that isn't too philosophical. Sorry.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining us. I think this is a truly exciting space where brands are starting to engage their consumers in this way and really taking leadership positions. And we're seeing a lot of it, but there's clearly more potential and more opportunity for it. So thank you very much, and look forward to working with you both further.
Thank you.
Thank you.